Well, hello there, ladies and gents. How the red devil are you? AndyManCam here, and welcome to this quick and dirty test ride review of the Ducati HyperMotard 950 SP. So yes, while bothering the Ducati garage's ears about the Monster 821, which I just test rode, check the link in the top right to see that video. They suggested that, based on what I'd said about the 821, maybe I should have a go on the HyperMotard. And then they very handily and very quickly, sneaky Ducati buggers, bunged me the keys to this, the 950cc SP version, with full adjustable Öhlins suspension front and back. So we are rocking plenty of gold bling at both ends. Now, the first thing that really grabs me after jumping onto the HyperMotard after the Monster is the riding position. This is so very different. I'm sat on top of this bike. I'm sat very upright. Upright? Yes, that's right. I'm feeling in a very IKEA mood today. I feel a little upright. Yes, very upright. The bars are very close to me. They're nice and wide, but they are very close. So the epitome of the sit up and beg position. The pegs are very comfortably placed. My knees are not uncomfortably bent. It certainly is, from the legs at least, a more comfortable position than on the Monster. I think I personally, I miss a little bit that slight forward lean. I quite like that with the Street Farter style. Street Farter? Jeez, what is wrong with you today? Street Farter bike. Because that's a bike that has a very blarty exhaust, which this one kind of does a bit. The next thing that grabs me is the fact that the seat is very, very firm. Always hit hard. And having just done 2 hours on the Monster, I think it's going to be tender by the time I finish that, but I have been told that there is a comfort seat available. As I've already said, we've got the Öhlins super duper suspension front and back. We've also got the TFT display, which seems to be standard across the whole range of Ducati at the moment. Although, despite being the same display, it's actually a very different layout to what it was on the Monster 821. On the 821, this display changed depending on what mode you were in, but for this one, change it to Sport. Same layout, just says Sport over here next to the Speed instead. Oh, what a shame, we're in Sport mode now. What am I going to do about that? Now, as well as the obviously expected radial mounted Brembo calipers on the front, and also Brembo calipers on the back, we're also rocking on the SP model Brembo radial mounted brake master cylinder and clutch master cylinder, because we've got a hydraulic clutch here. I think they've wildly overestimated how much money I've got to spend on a bike when they give me the keys to this one. Now, this bike is equipped with quick shifter, up and down, very nice. Well, it feels good in the bends. A nice response coming into the corner, off the throttle, coming onto the throttle is really nice and smooth. As long as you're smooth with it, obviously. Brilliant. That quick shifter's really good. No clonks, no jerks. Sounds like the perfect nightclub. Now, obviously, because of the Supermoto geometry and where the bars are, I'm not getting that feel from having the weight over the front as much as I would on my bike, for example, or as I just did on the Monster. That thing felt really sharp. So this one is a little tiny, I feel a little tiny bit more disconnected because I'm not over the front, but I suppose that's something you can do with your positioning, isn't it? Overtakes without changing gear, very easy for this Testa Stretta 11 degree 950cc motor. Liquid cooled, of course, because that's how Ducati rolls nowadays. I have to say, I think I could potentially get used to this position. The seat was a tiny bit softer, and maybe the bars were just a tiny bit to the front, which I'm sure you could do with some kind of riser affair, or with just even twisting the bars up. I think this could be the kind of bike that I could spend some time on. I mean, you've got more room on the seat if you want to sit back like a plonker, give your ass a bit of a rest, slide up the front if you really want to be getting the weight over the front. I don't know if anybody would ever sit like that. Oh, it's a bit pogo-y action from me there. The throttling is very sensitive in the Sport mode. That's really weird. There's like a quiet spot there. You hear that? Nothing. And then just below it, we get the brrrr from the pipe. 3,000 revs, it goes silent. 3,300, it comes back in again. How weird. Oh, but when you pick her skirts up, she can go. And open road speeds, 100 kilometers an hour in 6th gear, barely ticking over at 4,000 RPM. And I have to say the vibration level is pretty low at this point, and bearing in mind when you're cruising through the country roads, I'm guessing this is the kind of area you're going to be in. It's quite good to know that the vibrations aren't going crazy at that point. Well, as the speed rises, so do the vibrations a little bit around there. We drop off to about 55, vibrations have gone down to almost nothing. Obviously there's still a little bit of a gentle throbbing through the seat, but yeah, I could live with that. Well, the quick shifter from first to second there at the higher revs, I expected in the higher revs it would be better, but there was a bit of a clonk and a jerk there. Yeah, off and on the throttle, there's no real surprises here. I'm purposely letting off coming into the corner a bit more than I normally would, but coming back on, very smooth. Definitely does seem, it was exactly the same on the Monster 821, so it definitely does seem like Ducati have done a great job with their mapping and programming of their fly-by-wire system, because this bike also has the fly-by-wire throttle. It's just this cable coming out the bottom there. There is no throttle cable. Oh, my poor delicate little bot is feeling this seat already after 20 minutes. I'm also actually gripped with a little bit of fear that this trip might come to a disastrous end, because this bike doesn't appear to have a fuel gauge. Quite odd, considering the Monster 821 has a fuel gauge on the exact same display. Must be a different software, or the sensor isn't in there. There could be just the fact that they didn't put a sensor in, so you can't retrospectively put a fuel gauge on a bike that has no fuel sensor. It tracks nicely through the bends, and that was a horrible rough piece of road, but the suspension setup on this thing, well, that is, I've actually never ridden a bike with Öhlins before. Well, no, that's not true. I rode the Yamaha MT10. Video, of course, is in the top right, but I didn't really know what I was getting into at that point, because the Yamaha dealer told me it was a standard one and then gave me the keys to an SP, so well done. Yeah, through that rough bit there, the line tracked beautifully. There was no skipping, no jumping, no weirdness. Yeah, it just floated across all of that horrible ground there without any feeling that I was losing my line or any chatter throwing me to the outside edge. That was delightful. I think favouring luxury suspension over power mods is clearly the thing to do. Also, the engine in this, it kind of makes me feel like I want to ride a little bit lazy. Like in the Monster, I wanted to rev it out, whereas this one, just then, I was just lazily plodding along in 4th gear. Didn't want to give it too much pasty. Yeah, the throttle response in first is a little bit more edgy, but it's to be expected. That's where all the torque is, isn't it? Well, it's got a relatively nice look to it from the cockpit. Relatively sturdy, but mainly plastic handguards. They're not going to save you from any huge crash, but they look the part. I like the bars. These are the bars that should be on the Monster, in my opinion. Fat in the middle, tapered out to thin at the end. They look the part. The mirrors, to say, I think they're pretty ugly and horrible looking, very plasticky. Although the glass on them doesn't look too bad. Not nearly as good as the ones on the Monster. But these rubber retro motocross style gator things on there, oh, I don't like the look of those at all. And the round stalks, oh, it's very yesterday, isn't it? But I suppose for a HyperMotard it just kind of fits. A little bit of function over form. You kind of expect all of this to be a bit more sexy for a Ducati though. Oh, but the handling of the bike is fabulous. That's really enjoyable. Well, we're in the boring bit. We've got 3 rider modes on this bike. To change the rider modes, we use the buttons over here on the left cluster, the big one, which is also the indicators. Hold that in, which I'm very happy to see. On the Monster, you just push it in once and it comes up with this mode setting, which was a real pain in the arse. But then you select the mode that you want. Let's go for some sports action. Chop the throttle, push the button again, then you're in sport mode. As well as sport mode, there is urban and touring. both of which has different levels of traction control, wheelie control, quick shift settings and ABS settings. And I would imagine probably something a bit different on the throttle response. I got the feeling that the urban one was a little softer, a little bit more progressive with the throttle, whereas Sport is more directly on with full beans injection. Now obviously with the gold bling front and rear for the springing duties on this bike means we've got full adjustment. Although I have to say, even how it's set up now, that feels delightful. It's so smooth, but doesn't feel at all wallowy or soft. This is just absolutely perfect. Yeah, handles beautifully. I mean, I've got no real idea if I was coming through these bends faster or slower than on the Monster or on my bike, but to be honest, how much does that really matter when, like me, you ride mostly alone anyway? As long as it's fun, that's the main important thing. And I'm finding the fueling of this bike and of the Monster far more enjoyable than the fueling on my Yamaha. No jerkiness when you come off the throttle here. So I'm off the throttle, third gear, roll on, no jerk, no jump. Same again, come onto the brakes, on the throttle. Oh, that is wonderful. It just makes it so effortless. They've done a really good job with the fly-by-wire here, by my opinion. The brakes are pretty tasty as well. Nice little pop from the pipe with every upshift. Sorry, pipes, because we are rocking dual high-level pipes on this bike. In fact, let's pull up and have a quick little look at exactly what we are rocking with this bike, so you can all see what we're dealing with. To be honest, so I can see what I'm dealing with a little bit. It was all a bit quick, a bit of a blur. Wanted to give the keys back to the Monster. Oh, try this instead. Bosh, here's the keys, off you go. You've already even really had a chance to look at it. So there we go, there it is. Ducati HyperMotard 950 SP, putting out a whole bunch of horsepower. I'm afraid I don't know offhand, but I'll put it on screen. I mean, overall, the idea of this video is not to give you a whole boring ream of stats and statistics. It was just to kind of hopefully give an idea of how the bike rides and how it feels, as I do exactly the same. Twin high pipes stock there, but they are not branded in any way. Guessing that must be some kind of an extra to get those. We've got a metal tail tidy. That's a big long beast, but as stock tail tidies go, that one is relatively svelte, isn't it? I wouldn't feel the immediate need to change that. And this is really nice. That's very sleek. The rear light cluster, I do like that. We've got the big long Supermoto style seat, very, very firm, but not proving to be too uncomfortable. It seems like it's wide enough to be quite usable as well. That's actually surprising me a little bit. And also with the rear seat here, plenty of space there, maybe to bung a tail pack or something on. I mean, this isn't the reason why many people buy bikes like this, but for my use, I would definitely want to be able to go touring. So good to know that there is space, at the very least, for my tail pack to go on, and maybe options for panniers and stuff later on. Down at the engine area, we've got this beautiful red trellis frame. Bit of a shame that this has kind of disappeared on the Monster, because it's now become a trellis subframe at the front and subframe at the back, with the motor being a stressed piece. I mean, obviously that's the efficient way to do it, but there's something cool about Ducatis, isn't there, with a trellis frame. I remember lusting after my first Monster when I first got into bikes years and years ago, and that trellis frame was just that was one of the things that made it just cool. We've got a looks like an oil filter down here, very precariously placed in the way of all of the stones and things. That would obviously need some kind of protection. Nice to see that the timing chains and all the engine gubbins is covered here by a lovely carbon fibre piece. I'm assuming that's standard only on the SP model, because that looks vastly improved on the horrible piece of plastic which was on the Monster 821. And then obviously we're rocking the gorgeously gold Merlin's front forks, upside down, obviously, even with gold stanchions. It's such a nice touch that they do that. Show everybody just how blinging your bike really is. And of course, radial mounted Brembo calipers. Nice touch with carbon fibre mudguard there. Well, half mudguard, because obviously we've got the beak on the front there. And obviously rocking the very sporty Pirelli Diablo Super Corsa SPs. Nice sticky rubber for a slightly leery bike. On the other side, thanks to the frame, again, a lot of the ugliness from the Monster 821 is kind of hidden away there, which is nice. The hoses aren't sticking out quite so much into the wind. I think it just looks a lot neater, if I'm honest. It looks a lot nicer. And the beautiful Erlens bounciness there, just hiding so conspicuously at the back. And of course, single-sided swing arm. And you can also see the gubbins for the quick shifter here. That's a very short shift rod, isn't it? And that back wheel, that is absolutely beautiful, isn't it? That's a piece of work. Neptune's trident nonsense going on there. Yeah, that's good. Marcazzini forged wheels, no less. Yeah, I'd hate to think how much this thing costs, but I will, of course, splash it up on the screen for you. I think it's going to be quite horribly out of my price range, but never one to turn down a ride on a new bike, especially when it's somebody else's. And it's also really nice that the pipes don't obscure that back wheel in any way. That's just such a cool look, isn't it? Single-sided swing arm with nothing obscuring it. I'm a big fan. Even though high pipes obviously do affect the centre of gravity, but I think on a bike like this, that's not really what you're thinking about, is it? It's just a bit of hooliganism. So with that in mind, let's get back to hooliganing. But not before I've had a little look in here to see how much fuel I've got. I'll tell you what, there's some in there, but I've got no way of telling exactly how much. Probably should have found that out before I started. Anyway, I'm going to be heading straight back to the dealership now. Oh, that is tall, isn't it? I mean, this floor's a bit weird, but I am 6'4" with a 34-inch inseam, and I mean, I can flat-foot it, but I am pretty much sitting on the bike already, so this is definitely a taller machine. Even down in the lower rev ranges, that quick shifter does a pretty good job. Obviously, first to second is a little bit lumpy, but I think that's always going to be the same with pretty much every quick shifter. Ooh, look at that. Do you know what? Just to be safe, I think I'm going to quickly bung a fiver in to make sure I get back. So I'll see you in a second as we continue. Yeah, I think the walking back to it on the forecourt test is once again pretty good. There's lots of red and white and carbon fibre. I like it, and to be honest, I've already had a couple of guys look at me because I think they're quite uncommon, aren't they? It's not the usual bike that you see out and about. And usually something more like that is still quite desirable, but more often seen. And I certainly don't imagine you see many of these touring. So who knows? Maybe a HyperMotard could be the way to go for me. A bit of touring craziness on a bike sort of unsuitable for it. But size-wise, at the very least, I think the fit is perfect. Feels very nice. I've got to give it to the girl in the shop. She made a pretty good call, because I think if I had an extra $5,000 in my budget, I'd potentially take this away right now. I mean, I have a few modifications done. I say $5,000, it's probably more like 10 extra. And with all of this Brembo and Erlens and stuff, it's not going to be cheap, is it? But it don't half go. I couldn't honestly say if it feels like it's faster than the Monster, but it feels almost lazier and more relaxed as it does it. Could be something to do with the shape and the size. Could just be the different characteristics of the slightly different displacement of the motor. It would be very interesting to see how one of these would handle properly in the mountains. That would be quite an exciting experience, I think. I'll be honest, I've always quite liked the idea of a supermoto or a hypermoto, whatever you want to call it. But I'd have to say, between the Monster and this, at the moment, I'm leaning more towards this. I'm not thinking about, or I'm not noticing the buzz and the vibrations as much with this bike as I was with the Monster. I mean, in the lower rev, certainly it feels like there's just a few less vibes. It's just a little bit less lumpy. I mean, when you come on the gas from low revs, sure, there's a bit of a rumble, but it quickly goes away, and then the bike just gets on with it. And again, overtaking without even needing to shift down. V-twins are just so tractable, aren't they? So the HyperMotard 950, what do I like? I like the height of it, I like the position of the foot pegs and where my legs are there on the nice smooth sides of the flanks of the bike here, so moving around, getting some leverage into the bends and things is nice and easy. Obviously if I wanted to go crazy at some point and give it some foot out action, then that works as well. Very nice. I don't like, however, that the bars are a bit too close to me. I'm not sure why they're sweeping back towards me. I would prefer more of an aggressive forward stance, but then I'm probably not your typical HyperMotard buyer. I've come from the Street Fighter sort of a feel. I like the fueling in the corners. I like the fact that there's no jerkiness when you come off the throttle into the bend and then roll back on again. That's very well done. But at the same time, I'm not mad about the vibrations. There's constantly a rumble in the jungle downstairs throughout all of the revs. I mean, it gets less, it gets more, but it is always there in some degree. And who knows, maybe that's less annoying than the constant light buzz that I get through my 4-cylinder Yamaha. I love the tractability of the engine and the fact that it lazily just gets on with it when you give it the beans. There's a little bit of a to-do through the vibrations, but so what? We're having it. On this bike in particular, I very much like the suspension setup. And the quick shift is very nice as well. It's perhaps not quite as flickable as I'm used to, but it's certainly no slouch. I mean, you can still bung it with a little bit of counter steer, and it's what these big wide bars help with. I quite like the fact that the seat is so full of options, but they're not being a simple like pilot and co-pilot sort of arrangement. So you can use all of it, but at the same time, it is very, very hard. That would definitely need to be changed for this to be a long distance mile muncher. The dash is cool, but at the same time, I don't like the fact that there's no fuel gauge. I think in this day and age, a bike should have a fuel gauge. I mean, I think that could be the thing that could really kill it for me if I wanted to use a bike like this for touring. There's no fuel gauge. I mean, obviously, once you know the range of the bike, you get a ballpark of where you need to refuel. Maybe it's just a luxury that I've gotten used to, but I prefer to have a fuel gauge. Simple as that. Don't draw all of the attention of the van full of coppers sat there having a lunch break. I must also point out that there seems to be a lot less heat comes off of this thing than came off of the Monster. I think possibly because I'm sitting a bit further rearwards of the engine than I was on the Monster. My legs were right by the hoses and kind of right by the middle of the pipe, whereas this is all slightly differently laid out because of the high pipes meaning space at the back. And don't get me wrong, there is still heat. It's definitely warm down there, but it's perceptively a lot less than on the Monster. It doesn't feel like your legs or your nuts are going to get cooked if you sit in the traffic for too long. Yeah, this has really surprised me actually. This is not even something I had considered. I mean, I'm thinking about maybe getting something new or at least newer, and I had created a bit of a shortlist, and the HyperMotard wasn't on it. It wasn't even close to being on it, but it is now. It's just so easy and so enjoyable in the bends. Oh, Ducati, you've nailed it. So yeah, I guess we just need to do a quick blast on the motorway to see how that feels. Here we are at about 70 miles an hour, 120 kilometers an hour, and my jubblies are getting vibrated like crazy. I can kind of see why so many housewives sit on washing machines, but I think it'll only be fun for a short while. Give it a twist. Up to 140, we get a proper throbbing buzz through the seat. Throughout all of this, we're actually getting pretty much no vibrations at all through the handlebars. So I'm getting the brunt of it in my knackers, the rest of it in my feet, yeah, and the hands nothing. Obviously I'm fully in the wind as well. I was surprised that there's no protection afforded by this tiny little cowling on the TFT display there. And unlike a Street Fighter-y type bike, because of the lack of that forward lean, because of the very sit up and beg position, I kind of feel like I'm being pushed off the back a little bit. I have to really lean into it, which then means that my elbows are crooked at 90 degrees. Because of the whole position is just, it's just wrong for the motorway, isn't it? But then this isn't the kind of bike you buy to go on the motorway with. And obviously at 100 miles an hour, all those feelings are just accentuated. I'm really fighting to stay on the bike, gripping the handlebars for dear life. But with that said, the bike is doing it wonderfully. It feels stable. There's no speed wobble. There's no weirdness. And with that out of the way, that's pretty much it. That was the Ducati HyperMotard 950 SP in my quick and dirty, opportunistic test ride of it. And I really, really enjoyed it, a lot more than I actually expected I would. I thought it was going to be all wrong for me, but there's so much of it that is actually right. So thank you so very much for watching this little test ride video. I hope you have enjoyed it. I hope it's been of some use to you. If it has, please do the good thing and give me a thumbs up. If it hasn't, give me a thumbs down. Either way, if you've got something on your mind, leave a comment. Hopefully I'll be able to get back to you and have a chat about it. I have been AndyManCam, and if you're new to the channel, if you came along just for the HyperMotard review video, please do check out the rest of the channel. There's a whole load of stuff on there. There's more test rides of other bikes, there's garage videos, there's touring, there's just loads of nonsense, all to do with motorbikes. And I would love to have you come and darken my doorstep. And while you're there, why don't you subscribe, tick the little bell icon to make sure you don't miss out on any videos like this in the future. And I will, at that point, bid you all a hearty adieu. Thank you so very much for watching. Keep you all shiny. I'll see you out there. Ta-ra! Actually doesn't look too bad on me either, does it? It's about the right size. Bugger. This is going to be expensive.